Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review, and continuing my look at the Phantasm series, today we'll be talking about the 1988 sequel, Phantasm II. So Phantasm II was actually released by Universal Studios, making this the biggest, most mainstream Phantasm movie of the entire series, since sequels after this went back to being independent, low-budget films, and that clearly shows. This movie is really polished. It's really big, especially compared to the first one, and has greater special effects. But the downside of that is that, yeah, you get all this money from the studio, but now the studio gets to make decisions on the film. And the studio made a few decisions. First off, they didn't want the dreamlike, surreal, non-linear nature of the first film. So this movie is really straightforward. It's a basic plot, and it just kind of goes off from there. There's no real surreal imagery in the movie. There's still some weird shit, don't get me wrong, but it's nowhere near like the level of the first film. That, and they wanted big name actors to play the main characters. So the main characters in this movie are Mike and Reggie from the first film. Now, older of course, and they didn't want either actors from the first film coming back to play these parts, but Don Coscarelli, the writer and director of this one, as well as every movie in the series, he was able to get them to just recast one person, and that is Mike. So instead of actor Michael Baldwin from the original film, they got a different actor to play him, James DeLark, and Michael Baldwin would go on to play Mike in the later sequels, so this one feels kind of awkward just having a different actor, because the series never has different actors. But in all honesty, nothing against Michael Baldwin, because, you know, he's a fine actor, nothing against him, but honestly it's better that they recasted him and not Reggie. Because only Reggie Bannister can play Reggie in these movies, and the movie would not have been the same if it had a different actor playing Reggie. So, the plot of this film, I'll delve into that. Mike has been in a mental hospital for the past 9 years, because nobody believes him that the events of the first movie actually happened. Nobody has any memory of it happening.
Mike, that wasn't real. Your doctor said it was your own paranoid delusion.
But of course Mike believes it did, and he ends up getting released from the mental hospital. Reggie goes to pick him up, and they go back to his house to have a nice family dinner to celebrate his return with his aunt and all that stuff. The only thing is, on the way there, the house blows up. And Mike basically sees it coming, because he starts having this kind of psychic connection between the tall man and stuff that's going to happen. That convinces Reggie that something is up, so they go on a road trip to find the tall man and defeat him once and for all. And along the way, Mike also has a psychic connection to this character named Liz, who is also being tormented by the tall man. So yeah, the movie is very straightforward. It's very much a road trip movie with Mike and Reggie on the road going to get the tall man. And to be honest, that works. Like, I really enjoy it, despite missing some of the surrealness of the first film. I don't totally mind that. I actually like the linear plot of this one just because I like seeing these two characters on a road trip. It's really fun. And the acting is all good. The new actor playing Mike, he's fine. He's not, like, amazing or anything, but this isn't that awkward case of, like, recasting with the worst actor. No, Mike is fine. He has great chemistry with Reggie. That's what makes this movie really work, is the chemistry between the two actors. They just sell it. Reggie in this movie is a ton of fun. This is him becoming the typical Reggie that we know from the series, which is kind of this funny, silly character. He's kind of Bruce Campbell light. Because that's the actor I like to compare him to a lot. He's kind of like a lower level Bruce Campbell. And that really works. He's really entertaining, he's really funny, and this is his kind of journey from being this ice cream vendor in the first movie to being this warrior badass in this movie, and as the series will later progress.
Who are we kidding? I'm a 19-year-old kid. You're a bald, middle-aged ex-ice cream vendor.
Thanks, Mike.
The rest of the supporting cast is fine. The actress playing Liz is nothing too special, but, you know, she gets the job done. And then, of course, Angus Shrim as the tall man is still great as ever. He's still awesome. He gets a lot more to do in this movie. As for the bigger budget of this movie, I kind of missed the lower budget of the first film, but it doesn't mean this big budget is not welcomed. You could tell they're really taking advantage of it. Within the first 10 minutes, there's 2 house explosions, including one of those badass shots ever of just the tall man standing there and just turning to the explosion and not flinching at all, which is just an awesome image, just really crazy. The effects are bigger. You get to see a lot more done with the spheres. In the first one, you just see the one sphere fly in and impale the guy in the head, and that's it. This one, there's actually 3 spheres, and then you actually see it like impale a dude's hand, go up into a guy's body and out his mouth, and just a lot more crazy over-the-top effects that is awesome. There's also a new sphere that they introduced, the gold sphere, that includes a laser, because why not? Then the dwarves that you see in the first film, who you never saw their faces, it was always hidden, you actually see their faces this time. They have full makeup and stuff like that, which is really cool. I really like that. And then there's a lot of awesome, just great old school 80s style effects. Like the way they defeat the tall man at the end is a great elaborate sequence, which I really like. There's that moment where the tall man, like a version of the tall man, kind of comes out the back of a character, and it's really great puppet. It's really grotesque and just looks awesome. So the effects are definitely up to par. They're great 80s old school style special effects that I just love. Although one kind of downside to the big budget is that there's scenes in this movie that kind of just feels like a big budget remake of the first film.
Graveside service is about to begin.
Because there's a lot of moments from the first film recreated in here, just with a bigger budget and just more grander special effects. And those moments I could have done without. I wish it would have been a little bit more original, but you know, I don't mind it too much. One of the things I love about the movie is how, instead of just not acknowledging the ending of the first film, that kind of like horror stinger ending that every horror movie does, they continue right off of it. This movie begins right where the first film ends. And I love that. I think that's really cool. And normally when horror movies end with like a stinger kind of type of ending, sequels tend to just kind of either ignore it or just say that it was a dream or something and just move on. This movie and all the Phantasm sequels after this always acknowledge the stinger endings and play off of them like, oh no, that happened. That's part of the plot. And I love it. I just think it's just so cool. It's one of the things that makes this franchise stand out from other horror franchises. One also minor flaw of the movie is that it doesn't really expand the storyline and the mythology too much. Again, since it being way more straightforward and at times a remake of the first movie, it doesn't really get to explore too many more elements. There's a couple things that are added to the mythology, like this really cool looking character who's involved with the tall man, who's awesome and has a great chainsaw fight scene with Reggie at the end. Really funny kind of saying that Reggie's kind of like Bruce Campbell, and he uses a chainsaw throughout this movie. Just a random connection. And that character's a really cool addition. And then you have the aspect that the tall man has actually been wiping out cities across the world. There's a few scenes where them just like driving through these cities, and they're just barren and just destroyed, just lifeless, like nobody's there. And that's a really interesting aspect where you kind of understand more of the tall man's plan, that he's kind of actually wiping out cities in the world, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting, but that doesn't get explored too much. So again, the movie doesn't really expand on stuff as much as I would like it to. There is another sequence where they go into the tall man's world, though again, it's just like the first movie where it's just like a brief glimpse, and then that's it. But you do get to see what the dwarves look like in between the human form and turning into the dwarf, which looks really cool and really disgusting, and I really like that. But aside from that, there's not too much exploring of that. I would have liked to have seen more of the world explored a bit more. But that being said, this movie's still just really entertaining. There's a lot of funny moments in it. The characters are really entertaining. And then when the third act kicks in, where they go to the mausoleum, it just kind of kicks in and never lets up until the ending. So the climax is just a blast. Just a really entertaining 80s style horror film that is not in line with the first movie because it's so different from it. It's so straightforward. It's the one movie in the series that you show to somebody who you know wouldn't like the strange, non-linear narrative of the first film. You show this one to them to kind of ease them in easily because it is a lot more by the books and a lot more simple, but that's not really taken away from it. It's still very entertaining and a great 80s horror film that is definitely worth checking out. So, out of 10, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Because I just have a blast watching this movie. This is the kind of Phantasm movie that I could see myself throwing on every once in a while, just to throw on and have fun with. That, yeah, it loses some of the surreal weirdness of the first one, but makes up for it in just pure entertainment. And just great characters, great set pieces, great effects. And it's just an entertaining horror film from beginning to end. So after the not-so-great box office and critical reception to Phantasm II, Universal kind of just went like, yeah, no, we're good. And Phantasm went back to being low-budget independence films, and Phantasm III came out a few years later, straight to video. And I'll be talking about that one next time. So until then, I'll talk to you guys later.